So first thing we're going to look at is solving quadratic equations by graphing. So quadratic equation in one variable is an equation that can be written in the standard form a times x squared plus b times x plus c is equal to 0. So we have the x squared, the x, the constant, and then it's equal to 0. And a, b, and c are real numbers, and a does not equal 0. A root of an equation is a solution of the equation. You can use various methods to solve quadratic equations. So first thing we're going to do is solve it by graphing. So we need to find the x-intercepts of the function, and our function is going to be in standard form. So example 1, solve each equation by graphing. How would we find our x-intercepts here? Anybody? What do we do to find our x-intercepts?
Combine.
We can't combine anything. What was that? All of our terms are different, so we can't combine any terms. What do we do?
We had 6.
We need our two factors of negative 6 that add up to negative 1. So what are two factors of negative 6 that add up to negative 1? Two things that multiply to negative 6 and add to negative 1. Negative 3 and 2. So we have x minus 3 and x plus 2. So we just changed our equation from standard form to intercept form. Now we see our p and our q. What do we need to do to the signs of our p and our q? For our x-intercepts. What do we do to the signs? We change them. So the minus 3 would be p is equal to 3, and the plus 2, we have q is equal to negative 2. So our intercepts, the points, would be 3, 0, and negative 2, 0. Now we go to our graph. We go to the right 3, stay on 0. And then we go to the left 2 and stay on 0. What else do we need to help us graph this? A line in the middle or a vertex. How do we find our vertex here? We have an equation in standard form and we have an equation in intercept form. So we could use either one of those to help us find our vertex. So p plus q divided by 2, we can do that. So to find our vertex, we're going to do p plus q. So 3 plus negative 2 divided by 2. This would be 1 over 2. So this is the x-coordinate of our vertex. What do we do to find the y-coordinate? Plug it in. Everybody's asleep today. So 1/2 minus 3 times 1/2 plus 2. This would be negative 2.5 times positive 2.5. 2.5 times 2.5 would be 6.25. So negative 6.25. So our y coordinate is negative 6.25. So on our graph, we go to the right 1/2 and down 6.25. So our vertex would be there, and then we can graph it. Looking at B, what do we need to do to start for this one?
Subtract the 4, right?
Subtract the 4x on both sides. So we have negative 2x squared minus 4x minus 2 is equal to 0. What do we do to solve for x? How do we find our x? We can divide everything by 2. Perfect. Let's divide everything by negative 2 since we have a negative 2 in common. So this becomes x squared plus 2x plus 1. So we're dividing everything by negative 2. Now we can factor it to find our x-intercepts. So what are 2 factors of 1 that add up to 2? 1 times 1. So we have x plus 1 and x plus 1. So our x-intercepts here would be x is equal to what? Negative 1. So if we set x plus 1 equal to 0, we just subtract 1 on both sides, we get x is equal to negative 1, so our x-intercept is negative 1, 0. So we go to our point, negative 1. We only have one intercept here, so our graph is only going to touch the x-axis at one point, just this point. So that means this point is our vertex. So our graph goes through this point here. So the whole point of this section is to solve our equations here. So we are just solving our quadratics. This book starts it off solving by graphing, which we know how to graph. But the whole point is just to solve. So all we're doing is getting the x equals. So here we have x is equal to 3 and x is equal to negative 2. And this is all we need to do to solve. So we just need our answer for x, our solution to our equation. But this section just starts off by making us graph it to help us find the solution. Any questions? All right, 2 more examples. What do we do to find our x-intercepts here? We factor. What are 2 factors of 12 that add up to negative 8?
4.
Negative 6,
-6 and -2. -6 times -2 is positive 12. -6 minus 2 is negative 8. Perfect. So we have x minus 6 and x minus 2 is equal to 0. So we would set each of these parentheses equal to 0. So we have x minus 6 is equal to 0 and x minus 2 is equal to 0. We add 6 to both sides here. So x is equal to 6 and we add 2 to both sides in our second equation, and we get x is equal to 2. So these are our 2 solutions to this equation. To graph it, these are our x-intercepts. So they cross, our graph crosses the line at 6, so this point here, and 2. So our graph is going to look like this. We could be more exact and name our vertex if we wanted to, but we don't need to here. All it's asking us to do is solve. So these are 2 solutions. You don't need the vertex. All right, number 2 here. What do we do first? How do we solve this equation? What do we do when our coefficient, our leading coefficient is not 1?
Divide everything by 4.
We could do that, but another trick we learned is to multiply the first and the last terms together. So this is 4 times 9, which is 36, and then we just need 2 multiples of 36 that add and give us negative 12. So what would they be?
Six plus negative 6, or no, this negative 6 plus negative 6.
Perfect, negative 6 and negative 6. So when we put those into our parentheses, we get x minus 6 and x minus 6. We can't forget about this 4 out front that we started with, so we divide both of our numbers inside by 4. We simplify if we can. If we cannot, we move it to the front. Can we simplify here? Can we simplify 6 divided by 4? Are they both even numbers?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we can divide them by 2. So if we divide it by 2, this becomes 3 over 2. We need to move the 2 out front. So this is 2x minus 3. And then the same thing is in our second parentheses because we started with the same x minus 6. So this is 2x minus 3. I'm going to write it on the side here so I have more room. So this is 2x minus 3 times 2x minus 3 is equal to 0. What do I need to do next to solve for x?
Set it equal to 0.
We set each part equal to 0. So 2x minus 3 is equal to 0, and 2x minus 3 is equal to 0. We add 3 to both sides. So we have 2x is equal to 3. Divide both sides by 2, so x is equal to 3 halves. Since we started with the same equation, we know this is going to be x is equal to 3 halves also. So x is equal to 3 halves. We're going to go to our graph, put our point at 3 halves, so that would be like 1.5. What does it mean when we only have 1 point here? It's the vertex. So our graph would look like this. But our solution to this equation is just x is equal to 3 halves. All right, next we're going to look at solving quadratic equations algebraically, which is pretty much what we just did. So first type of equations that we have are going to be ones that we have to use the square root with. So if we look at all three of these, they all have x squared, but not an x term. So how do we solve for part A? How would we solve this? What do we need to do?
Add 31.
Awesome. We combine our like terms, so we need to add 31 to both sides. So we have 4x squared. The 31s cancel out. 49 plus 31 is 80. What do we need to do next? Divide by 4. So x squared is equal to 20. Now our goal is to get x all by itself. How do we get x all by itself here? Take the square root.
Square.
So we have x is equal to plus or minus square root 20. Can we simplify this?
Yeah.
Yeah, 20 breaks down into 4 times 5, and we could take out the 4, and it becomes a 2, so 2 square root 5. So these are two solutions for x. Two solutions because we have the positive and the negative. So we can only solve it this way when we don't have an x term, and we can combine our like terms. Ready for B? I'm going to take the silence as a yes. What do we need to do first here? Subtract the 9. So we have 3x squared is equal to negative 9. What do we do next? Divide by 3. X squared is equal to negative 3. What do we do next? Square root. So we get x is equal to plus or minus square root negative 3. Can we simplify this? What does it simplify to? What happens when we have a negative under the square root?
Make it a positive?
Not a positive. We just did this in 3.2.
You put an I.
We put an I. So this is negative 1 times 3. The square root of negative 1 is I. So this would be I square root 3. So these are two solutions here. So here our solution is an imaginary number. All right, let's look at C. All right, we got time. What do we need to do first to solve in part C, in question C? We could distribute, but we can't first because we have that squared. We wouldn't square root the whole thing because this is not being squared. So we can multiply both sides by 5 over 2. Because 5 over 2 times 2 over 5, they cancel out. So on the left side, we have x plus 3 squared. And then on the right side, we have 25 over 2. So I just multiplied both sides by the reciprocal of our coefficient just so it would cancel out. What do we do next?
Square the things in the parentheses.
We take the square root of both sides. So we have x plus 3 is equal to plus or minus. Can we simplify the square root of 25 over 2? Yes. What does it simplify to? 5 over the square root of 2. Which we can't have a square root in the denominator, but we're just going to leave it for now. What do we need to do next to solve for x? Subtract 3 on both sides. So we have x is equal to plus or minus 5 over square root 2 minus 3. Any questions from this section? All right, we have 2 more examples left. Let's look at number 5. What do we do first? Subtract the 1. So negative 2x squared is equal to negative 7. What do we do next? Divide by negative 2. So x squared is equal to 7 halves. What do we do next? Square root. So x is equal to, Ian, what is x equal to? Plus or minus square root 7 over 2. Ian, can we simplify this?
Yeah.
No, we cannot. So you just leave it as x is equal to plus or minus square root 7 over 2. All right, last one. Number 6. What do we do first? Remember, our goal is to undo everything that's happening to our x. So what's the first thing we need to do to get our x all by itself? Divide both sides by 2. So the 2 cancels out, and we have x minus 4 squared is equal to negative 5 halves. What do we do next? Before that,
Square both sides.
we take the square root of both sides. So x minus 4 is equal to plus or minus the square root of negative 5 over 2. What do we do next?
Add 4 to both sides.
Add 4. So x is equal to plus or minus the square root of negative 5 over 2 plus 4. Can we simplify this? One little thing that we need to do to simplify. We can take out the I.
Negative.
Perfect. We take out the negative, so it becomes an I, and this is 5 halves plus 4.